guys, BBI here. I want to stop and say thanks for tuning in and checking out whatever the video is about that's about ready to come up next. If you could take a minute and hit subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoy what you've seen here, make sure to hit the like button. We'd greatly appreciate your support. Anyhow, guys, all that aside, let's get on with the show. Well, good morning on this beautiful Sunday. And let's start the story on this FatCat 1x2. Gentleman said to me it was working okay and then just quit. So we're going to take a quick look on the inside and we're going to rip it apart and see what we can figure out what's going on with it. So give me a second. We'll take the tin off the top. We'll take a look at it, but I find this very interesting. This is a 120 millimeter fan guard. It's the wrong size fan. There's a 120 millimeter fan in there. Very interesting. Okay, let's start there. Let's just tap and test. So Mama exile you for being too big of a crackhead. He gets hooked out after it and says, "Stay in there with Dad." Okay, so we disconnected the 120 millimeter fan. It barely fits in there. Yeah, just gonna leave that alone. So let's see, what do we got going on here? This is good. That's wrong. That's wrong. Okay. So you got on, off, and then preamp on. Interesting. Strapped over transistors, which is not needed. Wrong value capacitance on the output network. He's got 182 puff here, and it doesn't need to be that high. Maybe about 70. This is okay. 500 and a... Let's see here. 500, so that's okay. That's correct. Why wouldn't we trim this lead? Why would we leave that so long? I got enough disc capacitors to throw the positive side out of resonance with the output network on the amplifier. Looks like the relay is being held down by a little tiny piece of double-sided stick tape and possibly the keying circuit. So, the voltage divider here is burnt. So what value capacitance has he got there? 121 here, so that's the wrong value. I want to lift this and see what value, or what that actually is, if it's a 2290 or a 2879, because if it's a 2879, it's putting entirely too much drive. I gotta turn the heat up on my soldering iron here. My business partner got me early birthday presents here. So let's go on in here and let's okay, it's 2290. I'll visually let you guys take a look at that. It's 2290 for sure, which that is good. We don't need to have this in here because we're running this as a single-ended device, so we don't need a flyback resistor. I want to hook it up and try it as it sits. Give me a second. Well, we got all hooked up. So can I even talk through it? Let's see here. Hello. Hello. Okay, pass-through tune isn't that bad. Preamp is in op because it's, well, there's a little broken piece of shit down in here. This is why I don't do preamps. This right here, the weakest link in the entire amplifier. And then nobody ever goes and tunes the pass-through network, ever. So you got all these different little impedance bumps just so you can get slightly better receive, but about 9 pounds worth of more static. So I'll go in and I'll repair this, and it's having all these parts hanging off the little tiny leads on the relay. Stupid weak. But what we did learn is it does key up, preamp is broken, and it's got a bad pill right here. This one right here is Pop Del Chuche. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up, and we'll probably take this one out as well. We're going to remove this, then we've got to give it a power wire upgrade because this little 20 or 16 gauge wire just ain't going to carry it. The other thing we noticed is that the positive wire is not soldered down all the way. It's hanging on by barely like a thread. And once we get the transistor in there, we can go ahead and we can check it. We're going to look at it on the spectrum analyzer, and there's a couple different things that I've learned to check. So we'll go ahead and run it through its paces. I'm going to pull the transistors out. We're going to check them real quick, and we'll get on to the next step, which is reassemble. Well, we took out both the transistors, and I took out the 10 ohmers, and let's go ahead and do a little test on this one transistor. We know one of these is going to be bad. Now, depending on what the gain is with this transistor, if it's below 9, of course, you're going to want to obviously replace it because it's on its way to the grave. I found 10, 9 or 10 is usually about as low as we want to go. After that, if I try to put a new transistor in with it, unless I've got another one that's got the exact same beta gain, they're going to pull each other down. Beta gain of 4. So this transistor is technically still good, but we're going to treat it like it's junk. So let me go get a couple new transistors. We're going to put them in there. I'm also going to put new 10 ohmers in there that are not literally the cheapest resistor that money can buy. And we're going to go from there. Okay, so let me take you down the train of thought that I've had. So see if we can get down in here and it be focused. If we look at the back of the output transformer, we're going to see there's this little gerbil of shit. It's right down in here. Okay, that made me concerned because the transformer's hot, and there's a little burble of crap. Well, it's not really crap. That's a screw. And so it's arced over and gotten hot enough at some point to where there's solder that's dripped down. I don't know how this thing isn't shorting out. That is a concern. But as I was in here, I'm looking and I'm like, why does he got the wire lead going down underneath the transformer or underneath the relay? Well, that's no good. And I thought, well, okay, what's what here? So I started identifying the circuit. So first thing I did is I looked at the output wire of the secondary on this transformer. And I thought, okay, so this side's grounded, so that means this side would have to be grounded. Well, it's not. This thing's actually flip-flopped out of phase, which is going to make it inherently very dirty. This is grounded here. This is grounded here. You always want to have your grounds on the same side. Otherwise, the transformers are going to be out of phase with each other. They're going to be out of resonance with each other, which is going to cause a lot of problems. And it will probably cause the transistors to resonate or oscillate, and poof, Bob's your uncle. So that makes me want to go and double check everything else inside the amp. So now we're going to go and we're going to look at our input signals. This is our input signal, and you want your output signal to be on the same side, on the same pole of the transformer. Poles are flip-flopped. So now let's go over here, let's look at the input. Here's our input wire. It's obviously grounded right here. Look at what we got going on here. Here's our output, ground, output, and ground. They're flopped. On a single-ended device, this is inherently destructive. Okay? This is 100% no-go. This might work only in a 2-pill configuration. If you had this in a multi-transistor configuration, like let's say a 4-pill, you're going to have 100%, well, not 100%, you're going to have 90 degrees of signal cancellation taking place. 90 degrees of signal cancellation taking place. So, what I've got to do now is, because I don't trust this here makes me very nervous, I'm going to go in and I'm going to remove the transformer. And of course I'm going to flip-flop the legs so it is electrically correct. And then I've got to come up with something that I can put in here to keep this from shorting. Okay? Before I even turn the amplifier on and try it from this point forward, I've got to flip-flop the turns on this. That means I've got to probably unwind and rewind this, move whatever he's got over here for a tuning capacitor here. I've got to move it over here. The other thing is you want to keep your leads as short as humanly possible here. So the variable, it's cranked all the way down. The variable here, we want to keep this 100 ohm resistor, we want to bring it down and tack it to the board as closely as we can. Our voltage divider that we've got coming off of our variable resistor, there's just, I was going to just try and put 2 transistors in it, put it back together, and then take a look at it on the spectrum analyzer, but I can see now that there's so much electrically incorrect inside this thing that for me not to waste all of our energies and all of our times, that's yours and mine, that I need to go in and I need to fix not just the 2 transistors, but I've got to change the core of how this is wired. I'm also going to change this so that the output tuning capacitance is the appropriate value. We'll probably go ahead and we're going to remove this relay. And probably put something in here that's actually going to work a little bit better than this big old clunker that's not in there square or straight or right. Let's see. Teflon at least. Teflon, 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 Teflon. That's not Teflon, so I don't want to hit it with the iron, but it's not necessary. I'm going to go ahead and clean all this mess up. I'm just going to clean this whole mess up.
And one of the things we're going to be doing to help that,
it's a small piece of phenolic.
Communications to the DSN. Communicate with photons on laser beams.
That's a creative workaround for the problem. I'll give it that. But I've got to change the way the wires are set up in this thing, though. This will not work out of phase with this. But this, that's acceptable. That's a good solution. So you can see it just looked like a frickin' glob of goo on there.
But we won't be able to do that afterward. We'll have demonstrated the technology. But to do this on
Okay. Well, I know from here back is now electrically correct and technically correct. So the right capacitance on the output tune, we've added a different relay. The other one's sitting in there all cantered and backwards and nothing was supported. I couldn't go with that. So we put a new relay in it, and it's now actually affixed down to the board properly. Paired to preamp, changed out the jumper wires coming from the coax connectors. Just trying to work with what we had here at hand. Changed the output power distribution, or the power distribution network. Went ahead and flip-flopped the leads, so now that we're in phase, which I know is going to cause an unbelievable amount of power difference. Can't believe that. So now what we got to do is we got to go and flip-flop this so it's in phase with the output network. I want to double check my output capacitor. I want to tighten and clean all this up in here. And then we're going to upgrade the power wire from that to that. Which, I mean, I know this is only about 20 amps worth of current draw. But 20 amps through this long of a wire versus 20 amps through this long of a wire at 12 volt DC, you do the math. So let me go in here and do my shtidiggity here, and we'll get this going. All right. I can think of better ways to spend my afternoon than what I did here today, but this is still educational. Let me shut off the spectrum analyzer and plug all the soldering irons and stuff, because I'm done. It's done. It's done. So this thing, as soon as I got it running, it just sat there and oscillated and oscillated and oscillated. And what ended up being the deal was we had a couple extra parts. We had this wire, which was coming off the on-off switch, and it was wrapped down around underneath, and it came over and it went to this pad. And I'm not too sure what it was doing. I think this was for something else that never got added or wasn't ever installed or may have been removed or whatever. I'm not too overly sure, but it was soldered right directly to this pad. That pad then in turn had these two different, value capacitors going to ground. Don't know what this is. We took it out. I don't know what this was going to. Had no purpose whatsoever other than being an antenna inside the box. We took it out. So I started looking around and come find out the input transformer didn't have enough turns on it. Was it not only wired out of phase with the output transformer, it didn't have enough input turns. So we didn't have enough induction inside the transformer. Also didn't have a choke going to ground coming from the input transformer. And then last but not least, my brain finally said, hey man, let's check these bigger than big caps. These are 1,000 puff a piece. These two caps right here. I need 3,000 to 4,000 puffs worth of capacitance to emulate the load of the transistor on the other side of the transformer. So I added a capacitor here, and then I went to playing. Had to come over here, had to change this capacitor, which was a 121 puff. At least that's what it says on the disc. It actually was only a 105. These Alibaba caps are just all over the damn place. There's, like, you don't even, it says 3 kV. I wouldn't put 3,000 volts by that. But their tolerances are like 15-20%. Okay. I had to put a 150 in its place here. This capacitor here was a 105. I don't remember where that one got off to. I think I already threw it in the F-it bucket. I went ahead and brought this up to the 180 that it's supposed to be. Got rid of that resistor. You guys remember this one here. This little burned up guy that was here. And went to playing. Now, the next thing I figured out was I was bumping into what they call saturation in my output transformer. You can sit there and see that on the oscilloscope. The edges of the oscilloscope get very blurry, and it means that the transformer is, well, past its point of being able to take any more RF. And I was only getting about 500 watts out of it. So I went in and changed this to 12 gauge, and how you do that, when you do that, not how. When you do that, it gives it substantially more surface area on the wire, and that's up from the, what did we figure out this was? 16 gauge. No, it's less than that. Let me re-gauge it here real quick for you all. 18 gauge wire. We went from 18 to 12. And when we did that, that tightened up the signal quite a bit. And I did have 140 in here for the output capacitance. And because of the size of the core and the size of the wire, to make everything perfectly happy, it ended up coming in at about 130 puff. So I'd use multiple caps to get there. That's okay, because each one of these caps is rated for 500 volts. That's 1.5 kV, which would be more than plenty to adequately handle the output power of this little guy. So tightened up this whole area here, went and brought I don't know if you remember or not, the 100 ohm resistor was coming over here to the board, brought it down, changed the input tune so it was actually resonant. Now that we had the proper number of turns in the input transformer and the right amount of capacitance, this had to have been adjusted. The output capacitor was a 680. I went ahead and changed that to a 1000. And Bob's your uncle now does 600 watts. So let's set this aside for just a minute, and let's go talk about this. Don't ever want to do this. We don't ever want to do this. The distance gap between the edge of the blade and the shroud that goes around the blade is a very finely machined, very well researched thing, okay? The way the air moves around the edge of the blade, this intersection of the blade helps start the motion of the velocity of air. The outer edge of the blade is actually what's moving the majority of the amount of the volume of air, okay? But when we go and we knock 2/3 of the blade out, the air just sits here and tumbles. This fan is barely moving any air whatsoever. I'm sure if I pulled this thing out, I'd get probably 100 CFM out of it. But it's sitting in here, running it internally in a case, it's getting about 10. It's because of the wake turbulence that's taking place, the overpressure on the space. So, my job that I have tomorrow, because I'm done for the day. Today's Sunday. I thought I'd just come out here and play with this for a couple hours. I've been out here for like 3. I'm ready to be done with it. I am going to take this out. I'm going to put the actual proper fan size in there with a little bit higher velocity so we can shoot some more air through this this beautiful thing now that it's all working right. This beautiful guy. It's all working right. And I'll put the right size fan guard on there. I'll probably have to put body plugs in here to compensate for the holes that are in the lid. But now that'll afford you the ability to actually have a mounting bracket if you desire. Mounting bracket's really important. As you can see, the screws and the pim nuts, jam nuts, pim nuts that are in here are right on the edge of the fan. I don't know who put this in there or why. Not overly concerned. Remember, my whole motivation behind everything I do here is not to say anything negative about anybody. It's just to simply fix the amplifier. So I don't know if FatCat did this himself. I don't care. All I know is it's not right, so therefore I have to fix it. Makes sense, you guys? I'm not out here talking any smack. It's like, I don't know if FatCat did this or not. I do know what I've come into and had to deal with while I'm working on this thing. Now, before I'm finished with this is the reason I'm going to do this tomorrow, is because I don't feel like going outside and dicking with it right now. I'm going to wash this thing, get it all cleaned up. We're going to spray a nice layer of clear on it, make it so it lasts. Then I got to go over every little solder joint that I've done in here today, make sure it's all perfect and pretty. But this thing is doing 600 watts peak now. I don't know what it was doing before, because, well, it was all blown up, and it had signs of oscillation and heating to it when it got here. I kind of had a feeling of that going in. So, like I said, we'll get this all cleaned up. Oh, and I rebuilt the power bus over here in the back and upgraded the power wire. So, basically rebuilt about 80% of this and had to check every single part that's in it. It's okay. It's my job, my job, and I'm not complaining. I'm grateful for all the work that I got. So, on that note, I can tell who... Also, the other thing I can tell is... I don't know, when you buy these from Charger, these cabinets and these enclosures, you can get these from ICA Manufacturing, by the way. You can get them mounted and non-mounted. This was a non-mounted box. I can tell that because of the hole pattern and the size and the type of screws they used to mount it down, and their screw placement sucks. So it created our problem over here in the back with the output transformer. And if you ever wanted to uphill this or do anything else in this space over here, there's a screw right in the middle of it. There's a reason that when they build these at Charger, they put the screws on the outer edge corners of it for real estate reasons. Me personally, when I go to use these, before I go and I do any of them, even though I get them with their pre-mounted, because I don't even like bothering to drill the pillow holes all that much myself, I'll take and I'll sink another screw right underneath this output transformer. And we do that for voltage and amperage. So the current has a little bit less distance it has to travel to the center of this thing. That's another thing we did, is we went ahead and we removed all the stripping over the top of the transistors. You guys, you'll find that unless you're using a Messenger or a circa 1980s, early 90s transistor amplifier where the traces are very thin in between each one of the devices, device 1, device A, thin trace in this space, this is a bad idea. All this is trapping heat on top of the transistor. It will not help it produce any more power, at least not on this style of board. Will not help it produce any more power, period. Now, in the older school, like old Messengers and that kind of thing, the traces that are physically in place in between each one of the devices was so small that they had a thing called metal migration that was taking place. Or they just call it migration or infiltration of metal. Okay, so listen, it's a really fancy term for saying they built a fuse into the cabinet and it wasn't able to carry enough current. So they went and they strapped over the top of the transistors. They don't use solid pieces of metal to do that, by the way. That strap that goes over the top of the transistors is actually a little piece of phenolic board with copper sheeting on it that's only a couple microns thick to hold the least amount of heat to the device as possible. The solid metal heatsink that you have now installed over the top of the transistor traps heat on the component. I guarantee you that this piece of copper can hold more heat longer than the ceramic body that the device is made out of. Don't do this. This is bad. Only do this on stuff that it's absolutely required, not on this style of board. Okay, got that out of my system. I'm going to go change me a fan, and from your point of view, we're going to fade out and fade back in, but really what's going to happen is I'm going to go enjoy dinner with my goddaughter. Dinner with my goddaughter's husband, who is just joining the Coast Guard here next week, which I'm really proud of that. Yes, believe it or not, that is one of our armed forces. Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines, and now Space Force. Anyhow, I'm going to go do that. Probably going to do a movie. We're going to get ourselves prepped up to do a whole bunch of other stuff. This next week is going to be a booger. I'm doing a 16-pill rebuild. I'm going to start on the copper mine. You guys are going to hear about the copper mine until the end of the year. It is an amplifier to which none of you have ever seen before. I'm building it. And this is kind of my coup de grace to the Toshiba transistor. Just going to put that out there. This is going to involve welding and machining and laser die cutting and pubic hair splitting and all kinds of stuff. I've already been working on it. The prep work for it has now been going on for almost 2 straight months. And I just got all the basic parts in here. Like the copper just got done getting cut on the flow jet. And then we had to have that end milled. Oh man. Anyhow, more on that to come. This is going to be a cool month. The month of December. This is the end of November. Also, don't forget, next month coming up, we are going to be shutting down shipping out of here and receiving of things. It's up to you if you want to send me stuff. I'd strongly suggest you don't. The brown shit box kickers are in full storm. They brought them on a full 2 weeks early this year, at least here in Boise, Idaho they did, because of last year's amount of internet sales traffic that took place. They were unbelievably overwhelmed. So, unbelievably overwhelmed, not underwhelmed, overwhelmed. So that means I'm going to probably close the doors on the 1st of the month instead of the 14th, like I did last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that. So, okay, guys, I'll be back. I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my beautiful Sunday on this holiday weekend with my family. Hell, if I get bored enough, I just might drink me an adult beverage. No, I'll probably just drink me a glass of water. See you guys tomorrow. And in your world, 1 second from now. I got a house full of people. Okay, so it's Monday afternoon. I just watched the Mars probe land. That was pretty neat. So I wake up this morning. You guys, I swear to God, you little guys, not little, but you guys are hilarious. Let's go back here to this text chain that I got from FatCat this morning. So I wake up this morning to a text from FatCat that says, dude, make sure to send me the link of that 2-pill you worked on. I get to thinking to myself, that's interesting. I don't remember messaging FatCat about the amplifier in any way, shape, or form. And so me and him go to talking, and I finally bring it up. I said, I didn't bother bringing this up. And he goes, oh, well, I got the voicemail. So yesterday I called the customer 3 times, and finally on the 3rd call, and I was ready to be done for the day, because I called him when I started, and I called him about halfway when I found what I'd found, and I called him when I was done. So this is the voicemail I left him.
Good morning time, or well, I guess it's afternoon now. Hello, Mr. Shadow Master. This is BBI. Uh, I'm working on your FatCat today, and I'm having a really hard time believing that this thing ever even worked, let alone worked well. So, ended up having to change both the output transistors. One was blown, the other one had a gain of about 3 or 4, which is too low for me to actually reuse. So it's got 2 brand new output transistors in it. This thing is wired all messed up, as you'll see in the video that's probably going to come out this evening. But why don't you give me a call? Let's talk for a few minutes. I want to make sure I got all my facts straight here before I go and drag anybody up on a cross. The other thing is I'm going to actually put the right size fan in the amp. The 120 millimeter fan in this fan opening is not safe. There's some problems with that. So anyhow, give me a call back.
So the reason I bring that into play is because I heard from FatCat before I heard from the customer. But that told me right away that the customer got my voicemail, hadn't called me back. So me and FatCat chit-chat back and forth, and I'm like, cool, man, have a good day later, bye. And so I text the customer, I said, I know you're getting my messages over there because, FatCat got my voicemail I left you yesterday. So how about you give me a ring back and we'll talk. Now, you guys know, being in this game, I'm really used to people doing some weird stuff behind the scenes to do whatever to make themselves look different, or so they're not blaming anybody or whatever. So I was just sitting there and I was thinking, I was just rolling around all the different options in my head. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to send him a screenshot. So I sent him a screenshot of the entire conversation that me and FatCat had. And I'm like, there's the voicemail. So he took and he recorded my voicemail. Now, nobody's wanting to fess up to anything. That's the other thing I think is cute. He took and recorded my voicemail. And then I think he went out and he shared it with just one person, because that's what he told me on the phone. I can only go off of what he's telling me on the phone, because I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm really not wasting that much more energy thinking about it at that point. I'm just not. I was like, damn. He took and shared it with one person. That person couldn't wait, hold on to their underwear or hold their water, and ran over and gave it to FatCat. You ever play telephone when you were a kid at camp? You take 20 kids and put them in a circle, and the one kid comes up with a story and he tells the kid to his right. And then that kid tells the next kid that tells the next kid that tells the next kid. And by the time he gets back around to the original story, no, it's completely butchered. That's what happened. That's the beauty of doing these videos, is that I get to be super transparent. Okay? I don't get to play games. I don't get to play bullshit games. And I'm not going to sit around and play this kind of game. So where I left off yesterday is exactly where I'm picking up today. I changed the fan. Whoop, whoop. So anyhow, with these little fans, we found that they last a little bit longer if we put a little bit of aluminum tape on the bottom side. Helps keep the RF out of the electronics. And put a new ferrite bead on it. We're done. So that's where we're at today. Now, I still don't know who did what, or how many jelly beans, or who blew snot on Henry's hand, and Henry hand gave a reach around to Kevin. Then Kevin went over and talked to Adrian, his girlfriend, and they didn't turn out to be gay. I don't know how that turned out. I don't care. You guys got to remember, at the end of the day, my job is to fix the amplifier and just be transparent with everybody. So because the he said, she said thing went on, I can't tell you that FatCat built this amplifier this way. I don't know that. I can tell you that some of the things that were done in here were not normal. The transformers being wired out of phase would have caused a ton of cancellation in this box, and I think you guys are going to be really tickled when you see how much power this puts out. So, on that note, not pointing a finger at anybody, and definitely not dragging anybody up on a cross, I'm going to hook this thing up. I'm going to put the tin on it and hook this thing up. Let's give it a quick run. So give me just a second, we'll reset, and we'll get this going. You should hear all them women in my house laughing and carrying on and having a good time. My wife's cousin's here, and a couple of her kids, and my mother-in-law and everybody. They're laughing, and I'm out here twiddly-dinking around with this craziness. Okay, variable all the way open. So let's run around the band here real quick. We're going to use a 2950. Okay. 14 volts, 1000 watt slug and peak, 1000 on average, 5 watt slug and reverse back from the bird, 10,000 watt dummy load. Got the 20 dB down pickup. Going to the Siglent spectrum analyzer and our Siglent oscilloscope. Here's our principal. Hello, 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 hello. Here's our drive. Hello, about 20 whole watts. Our pass-through tune. Hello, 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 hello. Just took a little bit of work to get there. And it's amp on with preamp. So it's a 3-position switch. On, no preamp. Off, on preamp. Okay? It's that simple. 20 watts of drive. 14 volts. Solid 600 peak. That little tiny spur that's popping up there is so many dB down it don't count for nothing. It's as clean as a whistle. About 60 amps worth of drop. So, oh yeah, input tune. Modulate monster. I don't know what it was doing before I went in there and had to completely rewire the thing. I have absolutely no clue. I know that I changed the transistors out and just did a direct transistor swap to get it running again. And as soon as I keyed it up, it stayed locked up and just sat there and oscillated. It wouldn't unkey. It's pulling 25 amps worth of juice, making no power. It was talking to itself. So I immediately unplugged it, and that's when I started looking for all the other problems. So, in a quick wrap, change the input and output transformers the way they were wired, change the power wire feeding the one-pill driver section, updated, changed the relay, put it in their appropriate spot, made sure the transformers on the output side were matching the input side so they were in phase, took the driver section, had to do the same thing with the primary and the secondary transformers input and output, made sure they were in phase because they weren't, had to change the capacitor on the output transformer on the driver, had to add a capacitor for emulation of transistor couplings to ground on the input side, had changed the input capacitor, tightened up the 100 ohm resistor that went down to the board and got rid of all the extra leg length, cleaned that up, removed the mystery wire, which I think at one point might have been going to a fan. I'm not too overly sure. I don't know why that you would have a wire that starts out right here behind the relay, goes up, goes to the switch, and then turns around and comes back over to the relay. It didn't make any sense to me. So I removed that. Gave it the power wire upgrade, actually soldered down the power wire that was attached to the bus in the back that was only being held down by 3 strands of wire. Let's see, replaced the wire going from the output coax, replaced the wire going to the input coax. Oh yeah, repaired the preamp and, changed the fan. From this guy to one that's appropriately sized to do the job. Now what I want to point out to you is there's significant size differences in the motor size. So we're actually causing restriction, and we're only using that much of the blade. The rest of this is going to be loss and cavitation. You're going to get more airflow with this fan. Now I have ones that are like jet engines, and we can overpressurize this cabinet. That little fan's moving quite a bit of air. You put your hand down here and this thing is hot, you might want to think about unkeying it and giving it a minute to cool down. Just saying. Well, guys, there you go. FatCat 1x2. Like I said, I can't say if this came directly from FatCat or not. I don't really care. All I know is it showed up in the condition that it was all in that you all seen. And now I'm repairing it. And what people choose to do with that information, that's on them. Now, the guy that we should all be feeling sorry for at this point is the dude that got entrusted with the voicemail. I still have no idea why somebody would record their voicemail. I can't see, or, well, I guess I can think of a couple different angles you can play from that. I decided to send it to his friend. Somebody's going to look really silly tonight in a lot of people's eyes. I don't know about you, I get through the day because people trust me. And I don't ever say anything negative about anybody. I just do my job. That's the reason I'm so busy. Guys, appreciate y'all tuning in to check out this little video on this FatCat box. On that note, I'm going to go probably work on an X-Force or something. I don't know. God knows I got enough stuff to do. Oh, no, that's right. I've got to go in the house and enjoy Thanksgiving 2.0 with my family. There's a big giant turkey in there and stuffing and deviled eggs and all kinds of crazy stuff I got to go eat. And then I'm going to go hang out with my family this evening. So on that note, you guys have a good night. Once again, I don't get to be here without all of you guys. And I appreciate all the projects and everybody continually sending me projects. Please note, we're going to get it probably about another 10 more days. And I am going to stop shipping out of here, and I am going to stop receiving things. I'm going to tell people to quit sending them to me. We're going to wait till next year. So, at the end of the day, we're all getting older every minute. The hobby's getting smaller by the second, and we need to be nice to each other, guys. I'll see ya.